The courtyard burned under the last light of day, red dust floating like smoke as boots dragged across the ground. The woman stumbled, her wrists bound, the weight of her velvet gown making each step heavier. Laughter rippled from the balconies where noblemen and ladies leaned in, eager to see humiliation dressed as justice. Her father stood tall on the stone stair, cold eyes fixed on her. He did not look like a man punishing a daughter but disposing of property that had outlived its use. "Take her," he said, his voice carrying through the square. "Let the savage keep what I cannot bear." The Apache warrior emerged from the shadows of the gate. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face carved by sun and wind, he moved without haste, his silence heavier than any insult. The crowd shrank back, their mocking laughter thinning into nervous murmurs. Only the woman stood still, though her knees trembled. She tried to meet her father's gaze one last time, but he turned away before her eyes found him. Her body ached with shame. She had grown up under the weight of ridicule, whispers in banquet halls, suitors turning aside, her father reminding her with every word that she was unworthy. They had called her spoiled, lazy, grotesque, though no one had cared to see the quiet strength beneath her softness. And now, this was her reward, to be cast out like waste, delivered to a man whose people had been painted as monsters since childhood. The warrior's hand gripped the rope tied to her wrists. He did not yank or jerk. He simply took possession of her, and for that, she flinched more deeply than if he had struck her. His eyes, dark and unreadable, lingered a heartbeat too long on her face, as if measuring something more than her body. Then he turned, leading her past the jeering crowd. Dust bit at her tongue. Somewhere behind her, her father's voice rose again, laughing with the men who would drink to her disappearance. The journey to the Apache camp stretched beneath a sky salted with stars. She did not speak. Fear glued her lips shut, but even if courage had found her, she doubted he would have answered. The silence of the man beside her was not the silence of cruelty, it was deeper, the silence of stone and river, of someone who owed explanations to no one. She tried to steady her breathing, but each sound in the desert night threatened to expose her terror. The rope itched against her skin, though he had loosened it once the town's torches faded from sight. He had not needed her bond, she would not have dared to flee. At dawn, the camp revealed itself in smoke and color. Children played near fires, women bent over hides and pots, men returned from hunting with bloodied spears. She felt every eye on her, the foreignness of her pale skin and heavy frame drawing stares sharp as knives. Whispers rose, some mocking, some curious, all cutting. Her cheeks burned hotter than the fire pits. The warrior led her to a space near his lodge and cut the rope. She rubbed her wrists, astonished that freedom came so suddenly, and yet she felt no freer than before. A bowl of roasted corn was set before her. She lifted it with clumsy hands, choking on the smoke and the rough texture of food unsoftened by spices and sauces she once knew. Laughter rang from a group of young braves watching her gag. She set the bowl down untouched. That night, sleep did not come easily. The ground was hard, the night air colder than she imagined. She pulled her shawl around her body, curling against herself, listening to the murmur of voices in a language she could not understand. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, bitter, unseen. She thought of the feather-soft pillows of her chamber, of the perfumed air, of the way she had once believed herself safe. Yet even in her gilded cage, had she ever been safe? The days that followed pressed against her like tests. Women handed her skins to scrape, children ran past and tugged at her skirts, men ignored her presence as though she were already a ghost. She stumbled through tasks with clumsy fingers, her body aching in ways it never had before. More than once she caught cruel smirks when she failed, her own humiliation gnawing at her belly. And yet, each time a hand reached to strike or shove her aside, the warrior appeared. He said little, sometimes only a glance, sometimes a short word in his tongue, but the air shifted, and her tormentors withdrew. One afternoon, chaos erupted as horses broke free from their corral, snorting and thrashing through the camp. Children screamed, warriors shouted, women scattered. She froze, heart hammering. A boy no older than 5 tripped in the path of the panicked animals. Without thinking, she lunged forward, arms wrapping around him, her body braced against the dirt as hooves thundered past inches from her back. Pain tore through her knees, her breath ragged, but when the danger passed, the boy still clung to her, unhurt. The camp fell silent. Dozens of eyes fixed on her, this clumsy foreign woman who had shielded a child with her own body. Her chest heaved, sweat soaking her hairline. For a moment, no one moved. Then the boy's mother pulled him from her arms, eyes wide with astonishment. Murmurs replaced mockery, low and uncertain. That night, as she sat nursing her bruised legs, the warrior approached. He crouched beside her, close enough for her to smell the smoke and earth clinging to his skin. His hand brushed against her scraped palm, steadying it in his. He spoke, not in English, but she understood the weight of his tone. It was neither pity nor mockery. It was something heavier, respect. But respect did not erase fear. Later, as the fire burned low and shadows thickened, she heard voices beyond the tent. 2 young men, their words hissing through the dark. They spoke of her as if she were meat left too close to wolves. Their laughter coiled like snakes, promising a lesson she would not survive. Her pulse raced. She gripped her shawl tighter, pressing herself into the corner of the tent, mind racing through impossible choices. She could run, but to where? She could scream, but who would defend her when most wanted her gone? Footsteps drew nearer, crunching on dry earth, their shadows stretching across the fabric wall. The flap lifted. She braced for cruelty, but instead, the firelight framed the warrior's figure. He stood between her and the men, his expression unreadable, shoulders tense, eyes narrowed. The whispers ceased. The silence that followed was sharper than blades. For the first time, she felt the smallest tremor of hope. Perhaps he had not been sent to destroy her after all. Perhaps he had been sent to save her. The days blurred into a rhythm she had never known, a life where dawn began with smoke rising from fire pits and ended beneath skies filled with unbroken stars. What once felt like exile began to shape itself into something else, trial, transformation, perhaps even belonging. The warrior no longer treated her as a burden to be dragged but as a pupil. His silence softened into gestures, guiding her hands when she fumbled with a bow, steadying her shoulders when she wobbled on horseback, correcting her with curt nods instead of sharp words. She listened, learned, failed, and tried again. The children, who once mocked, now followed her with curiosity. Her clumsy laughter while chasing a goat or tripping in sand stirred their own laughter, and even he allowed the faintest smile to crease his lips. Though words between them were scarce, they began to see each other beyond the surface. He bore scars not only on his skin but in the hard set of his jaw, in the way his gaze lingered on the horizon as if searching for something long lost. One evening, as firelight painted his features bronze, he traced a scar on his chest and muttered broken English, "Fight, young. Always fight." She understood more than the words, she recognized the loneliness beneath them. For the first time in her life, she did not feel alone in her pain. But peace in the desert was brittle. One night, a rider arrived at the camp, breathless with news. Her father had not forgotten her. He had hired guns, mercenaries with no allegiance but gold, to retrieve her. The tribe braced for war. Her stomach knotted with dread. The thought of returning to her father's world, where her body was her cage and her shame his weapon, chilled her more than the desert winds. She prayed silently, not for her safety but for the chance to stay where she had, against all odds, begun to matter. The attack came like a storm without warning. Under a moon thick as bone, gunfire cracked the night. Horses shrieked, arrows whistled, men shouted. She was thrown awake by the chaos, heart pounding as flames erupted from burning tents. Mercenaries stormed the camp, steel and fire cutting through canvas and flesh alike. Children wailed. Women scattered. Warriors met the attackers with fierce cries. She did not hide. Instead, she rushed to where water buckets lined the fires, dragging them to douse the spreading flames. Smoke stung her lungs, ash coated her skin, but she pushed forward. When a wounded boy collapsed at her feet, she gathered him into her arms and carried him to safety. A shadow lunged at her, a mercenary with a knife glinting in firelight. Panic surged, but instinct roared louder. Her hand closed around a rock, and with a desperate cry, she struck. The man crumpled, stunned. She stood trembling over him, chest heaving, disbelief crashing through her. For the first time, she had fought back and lived. Nearby, the warrior battled fiercely, blades flashing, blood streaking his skin. She saw him fall, struck by a blow meant for her. Without thought, she ran to him, dragging him from the melee, shielding him with her body as if the sky itself might collapse. Arrows hissed past. Her hands pressed against his wound, warm blood seeping through her fingers. "Don't leave," she whispered, the words breaking free without permission. "Don't leave me." When dawn rose, the mercenaries lay broken or fled. Smoke coiled into the sky, but the tribe still stood. She sat beside him as he bled, her hands raw from tearing fabric into bandages, her eyes red from sleeplessness. He stirred, his voice ragged. "You strong," he said, each word strained but deliberate. "Stronger than they see." Tears burned her eyes. "I've never been anything but weak," she answered. "My father made sure of it." He lifted his hand, calloused fingers brushing against hers. "Not weak. Brave." His gaze held hers, and for the first time, she believed it. In the days that followed, she tended him with devotion, fetching herbs, washing wounds, refusing rest until he did. Their bond deepened in the quiet hours, when words were scarce but meaning heavy. She spoke of her childhood, of the endless shame, of the dream she had never dared to voice, that someone might love her not in spite of who she was, but because of it. He listened, his silence more comforting than false reassurances. When he finally rose from his bed, scars fresh on his skin, the tribe gathered. No one mocked her now. They had seen her courage, her fire, her loyalty. She was no longer the discarded daughter of a nobleman but a woman who had faced death and stood unshaken. Respect replaced ridicule. Children smiled when she passed. Women offered her food without sneers. Men nodded with quiet acknowledgement. She stood at the edge of camp one evening, watching the sun sink behind jagged cliffs, painting the sky in fire. He joined her, his shadow long against the earth. Neither spoke for a time. Then, in a voice low but steady, he said, "You are not prisoner. You are free." The words struck deeper than any chain. Free. Not owned, not punished, not abandoned. Free. She turned to him, heart pounding with a fear sweeter than any she had known. "And if I choose to stay?" she asked, her voice trembling. His eyes held hers, dark and unflinching. "Then you stay. With me." Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to weep, to fall to her knees in gratitude for a life she had never thought possible. Instead, she stood taller, the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. She had been cast out, condemned, humiliated. Yet here, among strangers who had become family, beside a man who had shown her strength she did not know she possessed, she had found more than survival. She had found herself. As the night deepened and the fires of the camp glowed against the dark, she thought of her father's court, of silks and jewels and hollow laughter. None of it mattered now. Here, in the wild heart of the desert, she was seen. She was enough. And for the first time, she dared to believe in love. Sometimes punishment becomes salvation. Sometimes exile becomes home. And sometimes love finds us where the world swore it could never belong. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.